I once read a odd spot in The Age that said there was a couple getting divorced in their 80s, and the judge said, "Why are you getting divorced in your 80s when you've had all those, 60 odd years of happy marriage?" And they said almost in unison,
Welcome, Russell. Welcome.
Thank you,
back.
Freddie.
Yeah, welcome back to part 2 of how to attract your ideal partner. Let's get into it.
Great. So let's quick recap on last session. We talked about how our emotional patterns and our beliefs and the decisions we made when we were young set us up for attracting what we've attracted to date. So what we're going on to now is assuming that you've done the work to resolve the issues that have caused you to attract what's happened so far.
Cool.
So let's look at now getting clear on what we do want to attract in our life. So first of all, if you've had similar patterns attract time after time, that's a sign that you need to resolve something from the past so that you don't keep recreating it. Now, the next part of it then is getting clear on what you do want to create and what you do want to attract. So if we don't have that clarity, then we can start building a relationship with someone who has totally mismatched values that will lead to problems down the track. So one of the processes I do when I'm coaching people is, first of all, to help them get very clear on what their relationship values are and their life values. So if, for example, if people have totally different values on money, on religion, on health, then that's going to put additional pressure on a relationship. So there are still cases where people can have a great relationship if one is Muslim and the other is Jewish or Catholic or whatever, provided we can totally accept those differences. But for the most part, it's a lot easier if you have someone who has similar values on spiritual issues, similar values on money, similar values on health, similar values on activity levels, and so on.
I think with the values, it's also very important what the associated expectations are on those values. So if there are values differences that are accepted and clear, that's fine. But if those values are deal breakers, it's not fine. So the expectations are important as well.
Yes, absolutely. And we all know relationships where people on what for most would be a significant difference are totally able to accept that. By nature, I'm more of a night person. My partner's a morning person. But I've figured, okay, well, it'd probably be beneficial for me to adapt to be more of a morning person. And she's patient enough to allow me time and space to do that. So for some people that's okay, but for other people go, no, I'm going to be a morning person and I need someone who's the same as me because I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. and my partner's still snoring. So you've got to work out what are the most important things.
Yeah.
So let's look at a practical exercise we can do. And some of this I want to do as part of a group exercise that'll go for a longer period. We'll organize that after our next session like this. But just for now, I want to show people a document that I use when I'm working with clients. And it shows the frame is now, and you put the date in. And then you put what you're looking for in your ideal client mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, career and education, hobbies and interests, talents, and values. So let's look at a few examples of that. You can find someone that you're very attracted to, but if there isn't enough connection and mental stimulation, that's going to get boring. As my wise mother once said, Russell, sooner or later, you've got to get out of bed. So, so you need to make sure there's enough apart from just that initial attraction. So you want to have someone who's on a similar path mentally, and also you want to have someone who's reasonably healthy mentally.
Absolutely. I think when people are not complete within themselves and they don't bring that completeness to a relationship, it wanes and taxes the other one quite heavily. And that's always pressure that's not necessary in a relationship if people are able to carry their own weight.
Absolutely. And that's what we call those A-type relationships, or the codependent relationships, where I need this and you need this, and we'll come together and we'll support each other. The challenge with that is once one gets their stuff together, the relationship collapses.
Like
and
two halves equal a quarter instead of two whole people coming together. When they're half diminished, the other half isn't going to fulfill that. So the two halves equal a quarter. Yeah,
absolutely. And that'll often manifest in people trying to hold back their partner who's beginning to grow in a certain area. The partners, for example, who are excessive drinkers or smokers will find it hard when their partner wants to quit smoking or moderate their drinking. So it's important that we have similar values, and it's important that we have the adaptability to allow our partners to grow. So let's just look at that list. And it's fascinating, probably would have been 22 or 3 some years ago, I filled out an earlier version of this list, and I'd written 5.5 pages of characteristics of my ideal partner. And then I set the intention to attract that partner. Now, I want to qualify this. I'd spent prior to that about 5 years having some one-on-one coaching with a really top practitioner to resolve why I'd been attracting the same dramas. And we covered that more in the first video. But, if you have patterns in relationships that are repeating, just writing your ideal list isn't going to delete all those people that you're attracting that are bringing up those issues. So I'd written that 5-page description, and 9 days later, I met the woman who I was married to for the next 10 years. And it was interesting, when we moved in together, I found that list. And apart from 2 very minor things, she was exactly what I'd written. 5 pages, and there were only 2 minor points that were not exactly there. And those things didn't really matter.
You just reminded me of something incredible. When I was younger, I wrote a similar letter to myself about my ideal partner. And I posted it to a friend, and I said, if I ever show up on your doorstep with a wife or a partner, give me this letter. It's about 5 years later.
Yeah.
I showed up on his doorstep. I completely forgotten about the letter. And he's going, oh. And he went and got the letter and brought it out. Oh my gosh. It works. It actually does work. Beautiful.
And that's interesting with this. So anytime, this is a goal setting procedure, and it applies to career goals, to health goals, to any area. But when we're looking at with any kind of goal setting, we want to get really clear on that, and then we've got to let it go to allow it. If we're continually going, please, where is it? That kind of neediness pushes it away. And that's interesting that you said that you'd forgotten about the letter, and then you attracted that person into your life.
Yeah.
Similarly, I'd spent weeks refining that list, writing additional things in, crossing bits out, and to some degree too, writing that list will help you bring up stuff. So I have people that bring that completed list into me, and I look down and go, hang on, you've written such and such in here. There's probably something we need to clear on that. So getting clear, and then we've got to let go of it. And it was interesting that I refound the list when I moved in with my partner, and it blew my mind. And I showed it to her, and she's gone, yeah, that's me. and we had a great relationship for the next 10 years. The thing is, though, we're in a world now where there are changes more rapid than there ever has been. And if we're rapidly growing, she and I grew together fairly closely together for the first 8 years. Then we went on different directions, and it would not have been appropriate for me to say, hang on, this is the direction we're going on. You've got to do what I think is right. No, it was perfect for us to go our separate ways. And that created the space to attract something that's more appropriate.
Well, I guess it's like in the old days, you had one career and you were married for 50 years or whatever was the common thing. Nowadays, if you're in IT, every 6 months you change your jobs. I'm not recommending we change our relationships, but 2 long-term relationships or 3 long-term relationships, they may be the chapters of your life, and there's nothing we can do about it, because I think a lot of these circumstances are outside our control. So it's the adaptability, the acceptability, and the optimism of always attracting loving, caring relationships into your life.
Look, that's exactly right. I think about this case. My partner went on a spiritual journey chasing gurus around the world. And she said, I don't ever want to be in a relationship again. My spiritual growth is what I want to do. I'm going, wow, okay, that's, I'm going a different way. Good luck. And it was interesting. We went our separate ways, but we look at the time we had together. We built a successful business. We paid off a house. We raised a daughter. And we came together. I learned, she taught natural food and healthy eating. And I learned a lot from her. She learned a lot from me. And then we'd done what our journey was together.
That's it.
Now, I want to be clear that I'm not taking anything away from the people that, married their childhood sweetheart when they were 19 and were happily married for the next 60 odd years. That's a beautiful thing too. And it's not the journey for everyone. It takes very special people to be able to do that. It takes a lot of acceptance, a lot of willingness to grow together. However, there are some people that have those long marriages, and it's not easy. I once read a odd spot in The Age that said there was a couple getting divorced in their 80s, and the judge said, why are you getting divorced in your 80s when you've had all those 60 odd years of happy marriage? And they said almost in unison, we haven't had 60 years of happy marriage. We've had 60 years of hell. We just waited for our children to die before we could get divorced. Wow. Better they would have got divorced. Maybe the children would have lived longer,
Yeah.
But there are a lot of lovely couples you see that have been together for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And that's a beautiful thing.
I think love and connection is high on people's priority. And as long as they're receiving that and it's genuine and it's real, then they're fulfilled and they're happy. And I think the whole thing about happiness is it's a fleeting thing. People say, oh, but are you happy? Well, it's another emotion that comes and goes. I think being at peace with yourself and with your partner is beautiful when you're at peace with it. You may have days where you're happy and days where you're not happy, but if you're at peace with it, you've got a great accomplishment there.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad you brought that out. So that points to 2 things. One, again, is that similar values. So if I use a few examples to make it clear for people, if one person loves to eat healthy and the other person thinks McDonald's is a great night out, then that's going to create some friction. If one person is strongly religious and believes that religion has to be part of their family life, and the other has a different spiritual views or is an atheist, whatever, then that's going to create a lot of conflict. Although some people can be totally accepting of the other person's belief or disbelief, and that can work fine. It depends on what their needs are within those values. If someone's highly active, if someone loves to get outdoors and go and do adventures every 5 minutes, and the other person would rather sit in front of the TV, that's probably not going to work. If one person likes to drink a lot of alcohol and the other one doesn't, that's going to add a lot of friction too. So you want to have similar values and all those things. You know, I think about when my mum was looking to repartner, her life had changed when at 35 she went back through uni and you know, got her degree, and for her, education was really, really important. It would not have worked for her to be with the loveliest guy you could imagine, but if he wasn't educated, if she couldn't have conversations of that kind of depth and discuss the great authors and things like that, that was not going to work for her.
Well, I guess whatever edifies, builds you up, exhorts you, encourages you, you should get as much of it as you can. And whatever atrophies or pulls you down, you should avoid it like the plague. And I think when the people are coming together and they have shared values and interests, we're all trying to get somewhere for some reason. And I think
Yes,
when there's some mutual support, mutual recognition, mutual appreciation, these things all bolster a good relationship. When there's dissension, conflict, and just constant tearing at each other to go in a different direction and control, it's a terrible thing. So
yeah,
I think the values and the expectations around those values are very prevalent to bring about right relationship.
yeah, absolutely. Levels of tidiness is another one where you want to be able to accept each other. You know, if someone's house always looks like the people from Better Homes and Gardens are just about to come in to do a photo shoot, and someone else has a different idea of way to organize things, that can create conflict. Now, the other thing you mentioned there is about conflicts in relationships, and there's some great work by Paul and Lane Cutright. You can look them up. That's Paul and Lane. I think it's Layne, Cutright, Cutright. And they'll talk about, a lot of the work they do is based on the 5 stages of relationships. Now, there's other authors that talk about the 7 stages, but I think the model that Cutright's had is really good. So they talk about the first part, which is the attraction or the honeymoon stage. And that's when all the hormones kick off and we see the other person in this idealized light. And, you know, that's where Hollywood movies end. You know, the couple go through all this conflict together and they meet and then they go off in the sunset together, and that's the end of the story. Well, actually, no, it's not. Because after that attraction stage, we go into what we call the power struggle stage. And so at first, while all those hormones are pumping, we will demonstrate our love for the other person in every way we can. And we just ignore those little things that later on turn out to be red flags. Now, after a while, we start to realize, hang on, there's some of my needs not being met. And then starts that power struggle stage where each of the couple is trying to get their own needs met, and we start to have resistance and conflict build up. And there's a totally different skill set required here. And if you'll see people that will go, oh, I met this really nice person, and then a week later, oh, they're horrible, or even if it's 6 months or a year later, that just means they've moved to the power struggle stage and they don't have the skills to work through that. Well, it could be that, or it could be that they've attracted someone with very different values, or they've attracted someone who's built up or brought up whatever issues they haven't resolved with their parents or siblings. So that's the other thing to look at. So let's look at that power struggle bit. One thing that very few people like being told what to do. And if we start making demands of the other person, that's going to set up conflict. But if we look at particularly great work by Marshall Rosenberg, and there's a few other people that have followed on from that now, when we look at NVC or nonviolent communication, we need to develop those skills whereby we can hear the other person's emotions and needs. And often just by feeling heard, the other person will be in a better place to discuss it, talk about it, and work out what's right. So there's definitely a skill set there. We need to resolve our emotional charge on what's coming up in the relationship. And then with the right communication skills, we can resolve and work through those problems.
It's interesting when you talk about demands. My thing is, I don't do demands, but I do consider requests.
Yeah. And when someone makes a request, we have an inner feeling, it makes a request without an implied obligation that we are the ones to meet that need. Then we naturally have a desire to try to fulfill that need.
Yeah, it's politeness.
Well, it's politeness, but there's a few things it requires. It requires emotional stability, and that means resolving our mum, dad, brother, sister, Uncle Jeff stuff or whatever. And then it also requires us to have the skills in how to communicate. So let's look at an example. Let's say I'm going out with my partner, and she's meant to be here at 6:30 so we can go out. And 6:30 comes and goes. It's now 7 o'clock, 7:30. No answer to the text. My partner's not here. Finally rocks up at 7:30 and says, "Okay, let's go." Now, depending on my emotional state, this can cause a whole lot. I might arc up and go, "What do you think you're doing? You don't respect me. You don't love me." And that kind of response is a common response to something like that. Whereas if I was to say, I feel hurt because my need for respect and my need to have my time valued has not been met, then it's easy for her to go, "Oh yeah, I get that." You notice there's no blame in that.
Or the person responds and says, "I had a flat tire, or I pranged the car, or there was an accident and I had to wait." A lot of people are reactive before they've evaluated the details behind the situation. It's just having maturity to inquire. If there's patterns there and it's habitual and it's frustrating, of course it's a problem, but I mean in a one-off situation.
Yeah. So there's another thing on that too, though, of course, is that one about, for example, being late for an agreement. Some people, and those who are NLP know about in time and through time, some people are always late for everything. And personally, I have a challenge with time. It's easy for me to be late for everything, and I really have to work on getting that right. What I've found helps is to consciously overestimate the time it's going to take me to get there. So if I go, "Yeah, I'll be there at 6 o'clock," I'll go, "Oh no, it doesn't usually. I'll be there around about 7." And the other thing is to make a phone call or send a text when you go. "I'm on the way now. Google says my ETA is 6:35. So there's all those little workarounds for that, but that'll only come about when there's effective communication. If there's anger and blame and all that stuff going on, then two people just tend to keep clashing. So to get through that power struggle stage, we need to learn how to make requests without the other person feeling obligated to fulfill those needs. We need to be able to express our emotions and take self-responsibility for our emotions. And there's a whole skill set to that.
Wow. So where to from here?
Okay, where to from here? This is good. So we've looked at recap on needing to resolve our mum, dad, brother, sister stuff, our emotional patterns from our childhood, because we'll tend to bring them into relationships and repeat them. Then we're looking at getting clear on who or what exactly is important to us in a relationship, and that's about our values. And then we also need to look at those communication skills and learn how to make requests without the other person feeling obligated.
Cool.
And also being able to express our feelings, our emotions, without the other person being obliged or trying to make them responsible for it.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I teach and I feel is very strong is to respond rather than react. Because when you respond, there's usually a quicker and more beneficial outcome. When you react, the outcome's delayed and it's never good. So
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
those issues of maturity again.
And the classic is, you know, when someone comes at us in a state of anger and frustration, our natural response is to want to back off or to go into attack ourselves. And neither is helpful. Yeah. Yeah. So that gives us some help on clarity. So we need to look at getting clear on attracting the person who's right for us, remembering that people aren't good or bad. It's more about what's appropriate for us. So I like the analogy of finding the right partner is like buying a pair of shoes. Sometimes I see a pair of shoes in the window that look absolutely great, and I try them on and they pinch, or they're too tight or they're too loose. They just don't fit right. And so matching our values means that we're getting shoes that fit us right.
Well, there was a research done where people spooning, they lie together, and if they actually don't fit together, they don't stay together.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So for that sort of walking together, huddling together, connecting together, that physical docking, if that's not there, then the relationship doesn't bond at a deeper level.
Right. The other one I saw that I thought was fascinating was that couples are happier when the woman is smaller and trimmer than the guy.
There you go.
And that makes it really tricky for guys who are not very tall or for women that are really big. And yeah. So that's an interesting one. So what I'd like to do next time we'll get together, we'll look at the actual dating process. So today we've looked about at getting clear. If anyone wants that document on getting the details of your ideal partner, you can contact me through the website, shoot me an email, and I'll send you a copy of that. Next time we get together, what I'd look at a bit more is the actual dating process. Now, having said that, sometimes once we resolve our own stuff and we set the intention, we can somehow seem to attract that right person in just like that. And I've had clients who I've worked with who have left a session and gone out to pump petrol and met someone who was their next partner. But generally speaking, you want to also be taking some activity. I have not heard yet. Well, actually, I have heard of this once, but it's very rare that someone knocks on the door and says, "Hey, I love you. Let's start a relationship." If you're hiding in your little cave, that's not likely to happen. So we're going to look at the dating process, at how to connect, and how to make sure that you're getting someone who's going to have similar values.
Fantastic.
What I also want to do next time is we'll set a time and place for those that want to join us for an interactive get together where I'm actually going to be working through some of these processes in a group. So you're going to actually get experience really doing it.
That's going to be so cool. Well, thank you so much for this part 2 presentation, and we look forward to part 3 and the group stuff that we've got going. If you want to contact Russell on selfdevelopment.com.au, and Russell will forward you that list, and also any other questions you might want to ask him in relation to your relationships.
Yep.
So in the meantime, thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you next time.
See you next time.